You know what they say about first impressions? Well, actually, they say a lot of things about first impressions, most of them wrong. But Maya Rodriguez was about to make one that would echo through the halls of the Galactic Naval Academy for decades to come. And not in the good way. Well, not initially anyway. Picture this, the most prestigious military institution in known space, a gleaming monument to order and tradition, where future admirals learn to think inside very expensive, very rigid boxes. Now, picture a 5'4" human walking through its pristine corridors wearing a grin that screened trouble and carrying a duffel bag that had definitely seen better centuries. Commander Vex, a 7-foot-tall Regellian with more medals than a dictator's chest and twice the ego, stood at attention as Maya approached the registration desk. His 4 eyes tracked her movement with the kind of disdain usually reserved for expired milk. So, Vex said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that required years of practice, "You must be our novelty admission." Maya looked up at him and smiled. Not the nervous smile of someone trying to fit in, but the smile of someone who had already figured out exactly how much trouble she was going to cause. "That's me. Maya Rodriguez, professional square peg about to meet your round holes." Vex's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or indigestion. How quaint. Tell me, Cadet Rodriguez, what makes you think a species that only discovered faster than light travel 2 centuries ago belongs among the galaxy's elite? "Oh, I don't know," Maya replied, shouldering her bag. "Maybe it's our charming habit of solving impossible problems by completely ignoring they're supposed to be impossible. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the novelty." The other cadets in the registration area had gone suspiciously quiet. You know that kind of quiet that happens right before something either explodes or gets really, really awkward. Maya was betting on both. Her dorm assignment came with its own special brand of chaos. Apparently, the Academy's housing algorithm had decided to pair the unpredictable human with Kip, a Zentorian whose 4 arms seemed to exist solely to gesture enthusiastically about regulations. All the regulations. Every single one of them. "Oh wow, a human roommate," Kip exclaimed, all 4 hands waving like he was directing traffic during an emergency. "I've memorized 17 different guides on interspecies cohabitation protocols. Did you know that according to Section 4 Alpha of the Dormitory Coexistence Manual, we're supposed to establish shared living parameters within the first 48 hours? Maya dropped her bag on the unoccupied bunk and looked around the room. Everything was regulation standard, from the precisely folded sheets to the motivational posters featuring various alien species standing heroically in front of starscapes. It was like someone had taken the concept of personality and surgically removed it. "Tell you what, Kip," she said, unpacking what appeared to be an ancient Earth coffee maker. "How about we establish our first shared living parameter right now? I need caffeine to function, and this beautiful piece of human engineering is going to provide it. Fair warning. It makes sounds like a dying spaceship and smells like burnt hope, but the results are magical." Kip's eyes went wide. Is that a non-regulation appliance?" "Buddy," Maya said, plugging the coffee maker into the wall outlet, "this is just day 1. 3 weeks into her academy career, Maya had already established herself as what the instructors politely called unconventional, and what her fellow cadets more accurately described as completely insane. So naturally, when Commander Vex announced that they would be facing the Academy's most legendary challenge, everyone turned to look at her. The Kepler scenario. Every cadet knew about it, most feared it, and exactly 0 had ever actually beaten it. It was the Academy's version of the Kobayashi Maru, designed by committee to be absolutely mathematically, impossibly unsolvable. The scenario was simple. You're commanding a small patrol ship when you receive a distress call from a civilian transport under attack by pirates. You can save the transport, but doing so will leave a nearby colony defenseless. Save the colony, and the transport gets destroyed. Try to save both and you lose everything. The purpose, Vex explained with the smugness of someone who had watched thousands of cadets fail spectacularly, is not to win. It is to observe how you handle impossible choices under pressure. Maya raised her hand. Quick question, Commander. When you say impossible, do you mean impossible, or just impossible according to current tactical doctrine? Vex's 4 eyes narrowed. I mean impossible, Cadet Rodriguez. As in cannot be done. Got it, Maya said, settling back in her chair. Just wanted to clarify. One by one, her classmates entered the simulation. Each one approached it with textbook strategies, carefully weighing options, making noble sacrifices, and failing with varying degrees of dramatic flair. Some saved the transport, others the colony. A few tried to split their forces and lost everything. All very predictable, all very by the book, all very boring. Then it was Maya's turn. She settled into the command chair of the simulated bridge and cracked her knuckles. Computer, begin scenario. The situation unfolded exactly as programmed: distress call, impossible choice, ticking clock. Her simulated bridge crew looked to her expectantly, waiting for orders that would determine who lived and who died. Instead, Maya leaned back in her chair and said, Computer, run a level 7 diagnostic on all enemy vessels. Diagnostic complete. All enemy systems functioning within normal parameters. Interesting, Maya mused. Computer, what did the enemy crews have for lunch? There was a pause. The kind of pause that suggested the simulation had just encountered a question it had never been programmed to answer. Unknown. Information not available. That's a problem, Maya said seriously. See, where I come from, we have this thing called food poisoning. Very nasty. Causes all sorts of issues with motor function, decision-making, the works. Computer, implement random system failures on all enemy vessels due to spoiled ration packs. The bridge crew stared at her. The observation deck, where Commander Vex and the other instructors watched, had gone ominously quiet. Unable to comply, the computer responded. Parameter not within scenario guidelines. Maya grinned. Oh, but it should be. After all, realism is important, right? Computer, override safety protocols. Authorization Rodriguez Alpha 77. What happened next would be talked about in Academy corridors for years. The simulation, designed to be absolutely rigid, suddenly became absolutely chaotic. Enemy ships began experiencing random system failures. Their weapons malfunctioned, their navigation went haywire, and their crews began making increasingly poor decisions. Within 20 minutes, Maya had successfully saved both the transport and the colony without firing a single shot. The simulation ended, and Maya stood up, dusting off her hands. Well, that was fun. When's lunch? The observation deck had erupted in whispers, arguments, and what sounded like at least one minor diplomatic incident. Commander Vex stood frozen, all 4 eyes staring at the results screen as if it had just insulted his ancestors. Cadet Rodriguez, he said finally, his voice strained. Report to Admiral Thorne's office. Immediately. Me. Maya shrugged. Sure thing, Commander. Should I bring my coffee maker? This feels like a coffee conversation. As she walked out of the simulation chamber, she could hear Kip frantically asking someone if there was a regulation covering what had just happened. She was pretty sure there wasn't. She was also pretty sure there would be by tomorrow. Admiral Thorne's office was exactly what you'd expect from the head of the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy, intimidating, traditional, and filled with enough awards and commendations to stock a small museum. Maya sat across from his massive desk, trying to look appropriately chastened while internally cataloging all the ways she could probably improve his office layout. Cadet Rodriguez, Admiral Thorne said, leaning back in his chair. He was human, which Maya had hoped might work in her favor, but his expression suggested otherwise. In my 40 years of service, I have never seen a more blatant disregard for protocol. Thank you, sir, Maya replied brightly. Thorne blinked. That wasn't a compliment. I know, sir, but I'm choosing to take it as one. The Admiral rubbed his temples. The Kepler scenario has been used for over 2 centuries to test cadet judgment. No one has ever tried to hack it before. Well, sir, maybe that's because no one ever thought to ask the right questions. I mean, think about it. In a real combat situation, wouldn't you want to know everything about your enemy? Including whether they're about to be incapacitated by bad cafeteria food? The scenario is designed to test character, not creative computing skills. Maya leaned forward. But sir, isn't creative problem-solving part of character? I mean, I could have just picked who lived and who died like everyone else, but that seemed kind of defeatist. Where I come from, we don't really do the whole noble sacrifice thing unless we absolutely have to. We prefer the everybody lives and the bad guys get food poisoning approach. Admiral Thorne stared at her for a long moment. Then, despite himself, the corner of his mouth twitched. You realize you've just invalidated 2 centuries of Academy tradition. Sir, with respect, if 2 centuries of tradition can be invalidated by one cadet with a laptop and a basic understanding of human pathogens, maybe the tradition needed some updating. The Admiral sighed. Return to your classes, Cadet Rodriguez. And Rodriguez? Try not to break anything else this week. Maya stood and saluted. No promises, sir. She kept that promise by breaking 3 more things before Friday. The first was the Academy's primary engineering challenge, a complex problem involving quantum field generators that was supposed to take a full team of cadets 3 days to solve using advanced mathematical modeling and careful component analysis. Maya looked at it for about 10 minutes, then produced a roll of duct tape from her bag and started wrapping it around various connections. "What are you doing?" asked Zara, a brilliant Andromedan whose species had been building starships since before humans discovered fire. "Fixing it," Maya replied, tearing off another piece of tape. "But that's not how quantum field generators work." "Sure it is. See, the problem isn't with the quantum fields themselves, it's with the micro vibrations in the coupling joints. On Earth, we call this things coming loose. And when things come loose, you tape them back together. It's very advanced human technology." The generator hummed to life, running more efficiently than it had in the manufacturer's specifications. Zara stared at it in horror. That should not work. "And yet," Maya said, packing up her tape, "it does. Funny how that works out." The second thing she broke was the Academy's combat training record, held for 30 years by a Krypton named Brutus who was literally twice her size and had reflexes that bordered on precognitive. The fight was supposed to be a learning experience about different species' combat capabilities. It turned into something else entirely. "Begin combat simulation," the computer announced. Brutus immediately launched into an impressive display of Krypton martial arts, moving like a deadly ballet dancer with anger management issues. Maya dodged his first few attacks, then did something unprecedented. She started talking. "You know, Brutus, I've been wondering about Krypton mating rituals. I read that males have to demonstrate their worthiness by performing an elaborate dance while balancing on one foot and reciting epic poetry about their intended ancestors. Is that true?" Brutus paused mid-strike. "What? No, that's completely wrong. We don't. Why are you asking me this now?" "Oh, I'm just curious. See, humans have this thing where we get distracted when people bring up embarrassing topics at inappropriate times. I was wondering if it worked on other species too." "That's ridiculous," Brutus said, throwing another punch that Maya easily sidestepped. "Krypton warriors are trained to maintain focus under any circumstances." Right, Maya agreed, ducking under a kick. "But what about that thing where Krypton females judge potential mates based on their ability to stack fruit? I heard that's a big deal." "We don't stack fruit," Brutus shouted, his movements becoming increasingly erratic. "And it's not about mating. It's about geometric precision and why am I explaining this to you? Beats me, Maya said, landing a solid hit to his solar plexus while he was gesticulating. But while we're on the topic, is it true that you guys shed your skin like snakes? Because that seems really inconvenient for space travel. Brutus was so busy denying the skin-shedding thing that he completely forgot to defend against Maya's next attack. The match ended with the Academy's former champion flat on his back, staring at the ceiling in confusion while Maya helped him up. "Good fight," she said cheerfully. "Want to grab lunch?" "I promise not to ask about any more Krypton biology." Brutus just nodded weakly and let himself be led to the cafeteria, where Maya proceeded to regale him with completely made-up facts about human courtship rituals as payback. The third thing Maya broke was the Academy's strict policy about maintaining proper military bearing at all times. She didn't mean to break it. It just sort of happened when she convinced half her class that humans celebrated something called Backwards Day, where everything had to be done in reverse as a tribute to their ancestors' wisdom. Watching 24 alien cadets try to march backwards while saluting with the wrong hand and reciting the Academy pledge in reverse order was worth every minute of the disciplinary hearing that followed. Commander Vex was less amused. The annual inspection by the Galactic Council was supposed to be the most solemn, dignified event on the Academy calendar. Representatives from dozens of species would observe training exercises, review cadet performance, and generally nod approvingly at the Academy's commitment to traditional military excellence. Maya had been looking forward to it for weeks, not because she particularly enjoyed formal inspections, but because she had been planning something special. Something that would either get her expelled or make her a legend. Possibly both. The plan had started innocently enough. During a routine maintenance check of the Academy's computer systems, Maya had noticed that all the automated announcements, translators, and environmental controls ran through a central processing unit that was, frankly, embarrassingly easy to access if you knew what you were doing. And Maya, it turned out, knew exactly what she was doing. Kip, she had said to her roommate 3 nights before the inspection, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to make the Academy's computer systems more culturally inclusive, how would they go about it? Kip, who had been studying the regulations for proper boot polishing techniques, looked up with all 4 eyes. Culturally inclusive how? Oh, just adding some Earth cultural elements to the mix. Music, accents, that sort of thing. Nothing too dramatic. Kip's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Maya, you're not planning another learning experience, are you? Me? Plan something? Kip, I'm hurt. I'm just interested in promoting interspecies understanding through cultural exchange. Kip stared at her for a long moment, then slowly closed his regulation manual. What do you need me to do? The morning of the inspection, everything seemed normal. The Galactic Council delegation arrived precisely on schedule, a collection of dignified beings representing the most advanced civilizations in known space. Admiral Thorne greeted them with appropriate formality, Commander Vex stood at attention with his usual impressive bearing, and the cadets assembled in perfect formation. But then the Academy's public address system crackled to life. "Good morning, Y all," it announced in a thick Southern Earth accent that would have made a Tennessee farmer proud. "Welcome to the Galactic Naval Academy, where we teach young folks to shoot things in space real good." Admiral Thorne froze. Commander Vex's mandibles began clicking rapidly. The Galactic Council delegation exchanged looks of barely contained confusion. It got worse. During the tour of the Tactical Simulation Center, the computer began providing commentary in what could only be described as a Brooklyn accent crossed with a stand-up comedian. "Now folks, here's where we teach the kids how to blow stuff up responsibly. Safety first, destruction second. That's our motto." The weapons demonstration was accompanied by what the computer cheerfully identified as traditional Earth battle music, which turned out to be a rousing rendition of Sweet Caroline performed by the Academy Choir's practice recording. The sight of the galaxy's most serious military officials trying to maintain their composure while "ba ba ba" echoed through the weapons range was something that would be remembered long after the last star burned out. But the piece de resistance came during the formal luncheon, when the translation systems began adding what they called helpful cultural context to every conversation. The Andromedan ambassador's dignified speech about interstellar cooperation was translated as "why all need to get along better, bless your hearts," while the Regellian delegate's technical questions about fleet readiness came out as "so like, do your spaceships actually work and stuff?" Commander Vex looked like he was about to spontaneously combust. Admiral Thorne had developed a facial tic, and the Galactic Council delegation was trying very hard to pretend that this was all perfectly normal while their universal translators kept inserting random references to Earth, pop culture into their conversations. The final straw came when the Academy's environmental systems began playing what Maya had programmed as mood-appropriate background music. The solemn closing ceremony was accompanied by Yaki sax, turning the galaxy's most respected military leaders into what appeared to be participants in an elaborate comedy sketch. As the last dignitary filed out of the Academy, their translator helpfully bidding them farewell with "why all come back now, ya hear?" Admiral Thorne's voice echoed through the corridors. "Rodriguez, my office. Now." Maya found herself once again sitting across from the Admiral's desk, but this time the atmosphere was considerably less friendly. Admiral Thorne sat in silence for a full minute, just staring at her while his left eye twitched. "Cadet Rodriguez," he said finally, his voice deadly quiet. "Would you care to explain why the most important inspection in the Academy's history just turned into what I can only describe as a cosmic comedy show?" Maya straightened in her chair. "Sir, I was promoting cultural exchange and interspecies understanding through the universal language of music and humor. The Andromedan ambassador asked me if Earth humans always communicate through what he called primitive noise-making and incomprehensible regional dialects. What did you tell him, sir?" "I told him yes," Thorne replied flatly. "Because at this point I honestly don't know anymore." Maya bit her lip. "Sir, if it helps, I think the inspection went really well. The delegates seemed very engaged." "Rodriguez, they weren't engaged. They were traumatized. The Regellian representative asked me if this was some sort of psychological warfare demonstration." "Was it effective, sir?" Admiral Thorne leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. "Rodriguez, it was. You have single-handedly turned the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy into what the Galactic Council is now calling that place where the humans do weird things. Is that bad, sir?" "I don't know," Thorne admitted. 3 different species have already submitted requests to study our unconventional training methods, and the Krypton Empire wants to hire you as a psychological warfare consultant." Maya perked up. "Really? That's kind of flattering." "You're facing expulsion, Rodriguez." "Yes, sir. I figured." "But first," Thorne continued, "you're going to explain to me exactly how you managed to reprogram systems that are supposed to be completely secure." Maya grinned. "Well, sir, it's really quite simple. See, your security is based on the assumption that people will try to break in from the outside. But I was already inside, so I just had to convince the system that I was supposed to be there." "And how did you do that?" "I asked it nicely, sir. Turns out, if you phrase your requests as maintenance updates and include enough official-sounding technical jargon, most systems will just assume you know what you're doing and let you do it." Admiral Thorne stared at her for a long moment. Then, despite everything, he started to laugh. Not the kind of laugh that suggested amusement, but the kind that suggested a complete break from reality. "Rodriguez," he said finally, "you are either going to revolutionize military strategy or start the first intergalactic war caused by a practical joke." "Why not both, sir?" 3 days after what the Academy's official records diplomatically referred to as the cultural exchange incident, Maya was still waiting to hear whether she'd be expelled, court-martialed, or possibly both. She was in the middle of helping Kip reorganize his regulation manuals by entertainment value when the alarm started blaring. Not the usual drill alarms that the Academy used to test response times and keep cadets on their toes. These were the real alarms, the ones that meant someone was about to have a very bad day, and that someone was probably them. "All cadets report to emergency stations." Commander Vex's voice crackled over the intercom, but there was something different about his usual arrogant tone. He sounded worried. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Maya and Kip exchanged looks. In all their months at the Academy, they had never heard Vex sound anything less than completely confident in his own superiority. "Maya," Kip said, all four arms gesticulating nervously, "what's the protocol for actual emergencies?" "Beats me," Maya replied, already heading for the door. "I guess we're about to find out." The corridors were chaos. Cadets ran in seemingly random directions while automated systems blared contradictory instructions. Through the observation windows, Maya could see what the emergency was about. The 3 heavily armed pirate vessels had somehow managed to get through the Academy's outer defenses and were now demanding surrender. In the main tactical center, she found the Academy's senior staff gathered around a holographic display showing the current situation. It wasn't good. The pirates had disabled the Academy's primary weapon systems with some kind of electromagnetic pulse, and their ships were positioned to prevent any escape attempts. "How did they get through our defenses?" Admiral Thorne was asking. "Unknown, sir," replied Lieutenant Commander Yaris, the Academy's tactical instructor. "They seem to have exploited a vulnerability in our sensor grid." "Options?" "Limited, sir. Standard protocol calls for a defensive formation using the Academy's automated systems, but those systems are currently offline. We could attempt to negotiate, but pirates aren't typically known for their reasonableness." Maya pushed through the crowd of cadets and staff until she could see the tactical display clearly. The pirates had positioned themselves perfectly to cover all the Academy's weak points while staying out of range of the few defensive systems that were still functioning. It was a textbook assault, executed with military precision. "Excuse me, sir," she said, raising her hand. Admiral Thorne turned to look at her, and his expression suggested he was wondering if his day could possibly get any worse. "Rodriguez, this is really not the time for one of your unconventional suggestions." "With respect, sir, this seems like exactly the time for unconventional suggestions. The conventional ones don't seem to be working." Before Thorne could respond, one of the pirate ships fired a warning shot that struck the Academy's outer hull. The lights flickered, and several cadets yelped in alarm. "Sir," Maya continued, "what if we stopped trying to fight them with weapons and started fighting them with confusion?" Commander Vex snorted. "Cadet Rodriguez, this is a military engagement, not one of your practical jokes." "Actually, sir, I think they're more similar than you'd expect. See, the pirates are counting on us to respond predictably. They've positioned themselves to counter standard defensive tactics. But what if we don't use standard tactics?" Admiral Thorne rubbed his temples. "Rodriguez, I'm listening, but make it fast." Maya grinned and turned to address the room full of cadets. "All right, everyone, here's the plan. We're going to turn this Academy into the most confusing, chaotic, unpredictable environment these pirates have ever seen. Kip, I need you to access the environmental controls. Can you make the gravity fluctuate randomly?" Kip's 4 eyes went wide. That's completely against regulations." "Perfect. Zara, can you jury-rig some of the training drones to fly erratic patrol patterns around the Academy? Nothing aggressive, just weird enough to be distracting." "I suppose I could modify their programming," Zara said slowly, "but what's the point?" "The point," Maya explained, "is that these pirates are professionals. They've planned for every reasonable response we might have. But they haven't planned for unreasonable responses. We're going to be so weird, so unpredictable, so absolutely confusing that they'll have no idea how to handle us." She turned to the other cadets. I need someone to hack into the external communication array and start broadcasting random Earth music at them. Something really jarring. Maybe that death metal stuff from the old archives. This is insane, Commander Vex muttered. Sir, Maya replied. With respect, conventional sanity is what got us into this situation. Maybe it's time to try unconventional insanity. Admiral Thorne looked at the tactical display, then at Maya, then back at the display. Rodriguez, if this doesn't work, we're all dead. Sir, if we don't try it, we're all dead anyway. At least this way we'll confuse the hell out of them first. Thorne was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Do it. What followed was the most bizarre military engagement in recorded galactic history. The Academy's gravity began fluctuating randomly, causing equipment to float around unpredictably. Modified training drones swarmed around the facility in patterns that seemed to follow no logical purpose. And through it all, the external speakers blasted Earth death metal at volumes that probably violated several interstellar noise ordinances. The pirates, who had been expecting a standard military response, found themselves completely at a loss. Their tactical scans couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. Their communication systems were being jammed by what their computers could only identify as aggressive noise. And every time they tried to move into position for an attack, some new impossibility would distract them. The final straw came when Maya convinced the Academy's food service systems to start launching random kitchen equipment at the pirate ships. Not weapons, just kitchen equipment. Spatulas, mixing bowls, and what appeared to be an industrial-sized pasta strainer all went spinning through space in the general direction of the attacking vessels. What are they doing? The lead pirate captain demanded over the communications channel. This makes no sense. Are they insane? Unknown, sir, his tactical officer replied. But I'm detecting what appears to be a large quantity of kitchen utensils heading our way. Kitchen utensils? This is supposed to be a military academy. Maya, who had patched into their communications, couldn't resist. Actually. Well, she said cheerfully, this is a military academy where we specialize in advanced psychological warfare through creative chaos. You're currently experiencing what we call the Rodriguez Protocol. How are you enjoying it so far? There was a long pause on the pirate channel. Then, this is too weird. We're leaving. And they did. 3 of the most feared pirate ships in the sector retreated from a military academy because they couldn't figure out why someone was throwing pasta strainers at them while death metal played in the background. As the pirate ships disappeared into hyperspace, the tactical center erupted in cheers. Cadets hugged each other, instructors slapped backs, and someone started a chant of Rodriguez. Rodriguez. That echoed through the corridors. Admiral Thorne walked over to Maya, who was still grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Cadet Rodriguez, he said formally, that was either the most brilliant tactical maneuver I've ever witnessed, or the most ridiculous. I honestly can't tell which. Why not both, sir? Maya replied. Thorne shook his head, but he was smiling. Rodriguez, I'm beginning to think that question might be your personal motto. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez stood outside the briefing room of the Galactic Naval Command headquarters, adjusting the collar of her brand-new junior officer's uniform. The insignia on her shoulder was still so shiny it practically glowed, and the weight of her newly earned rank felt strange after months of being just another cadet. Well, not just another cadet. Even she had to admit that. The door to the briefing room opened, and Admiral Thorne's aide, a nervous Centaurian named Pip, gestured for her to enter. They're ready for you, Lieutenant Rodriguez. Maya took a deep breath and walked into what had once been the most intimidating room in her universe. The same room where she'd been called to answer for her various infractions, pranks, and general disregard for military tradition. Now it felt different. Maybe because she belonged here now. Or maybe because the 12 admirals seated around the conference table all turned to look at her with expressions that were equal parts respect and barely contained terror. Gentlemen, Admiral Thorne said, gesturing to an empty chair at the head of the table, I'd like you to meet Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, the architect of what we're now calling the Rodriguez Protocol, and the youngest graduate in Academy history to receive a commendation for tactical innovation." Maya sat down and looked around the table. These were the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy, beings who commanded fleets that could level planets and made decisions that affected trillions of lives. And they were all staring at her like she might suddenly start juggling or break into song. "So," said Admiral Kethvar, a grizzled Andromedan who had been fighting space pirates since before Maya was born, "you're the one who convinced an entire pirate fleet to retreat using kitchen equipment and loud music." "Among other things, yes, sir. The reports say you also revolutionized our approach to tactical simulations, combat training, and crisis management. I prefer to think of it as introducing a healthy dose of chaos into an overly ordered system, sir." Admiral Brixtal, whose species communicated primarily through complex mathematical equations, clicked his translator thoughtfully. "The success rate of operations employing Rodriguez protocol variants has increased by 347%. That's actually higher than I expected," Maya admitted. Admiral Thorne leaned forward. "Rodriguez, we have a situation that requires your particular brand of creative problem-solving. The hegemony of Vorth has been expanding into neutral space, and their tactics are completely by the book. Every conventional response we've tried has been anticipated and countered." Maya's eyes lit up. "Ah, so you need someone to be aggressively unconventional." "We need someone," said Admiral Kethvar, "to be completely, utterly, impossibly unpredictable. We need someone who can look at a problem that has stumped the combined military leadership of 43 species and say, 'Hold my coffee, I've got this.'" "Funny you should mention that," Maya said, producing a steaming cup from seemingly nowhere. "I brought coffee. Anyone want some? It's that earth stuff that smells like burnt hope but tastes like liquid inspiration." The admirals exchanged glances. Several of them actually nodded. As Maya poured coffee for a table full of galactic military leaders, Admiral Thorne continued. "The hegemony's fleet movements follow traditional patterns. Their supply lines are efficient and well defended. Their communication protocols are secure and standardized. Everything they do is logical, predictable, and effective." "Sounds boring," Maya said, handing Admiral Brixtal a cup. "What's their weakness?" "That's just it," Thorne replied. "They don't seem to have any conventional weaknesses." Maya grinned. "Sir, you just said the magic words. They don't have any conventional weaknesses. But I bet they have plenty of unconventional ones." She stood up and walked to the tactical display showing the hegemony's fleet positions. "See, the thing about being completely logical and predictable is that you become completely vulnerable to illogical and unpredictable responses. These guys have optimized their entire military strategy around the assumption that their enemies will behave rationally." "And you're suggesting we behave irrationally?" Admiral Kethvar asked. "I'm suggesting we behave human," Maya replied. "There's a difference. We're not irrational, we just use a different kind of logic. The kind of logic that says if you can't go through a problem, around a problem, or over a problem, you go completely sideways and approach it from an angle that doesn't technically exist." She turned to face the assembled admirals, and for a moment, the weight of what she was about to propose settled on her shoulders. These beings trusted her enough to ask for her help with something that could determine the fate of entire star systems. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "Give me a fleet," she said simply. "Not a big one, just enough ships to properly confuse them. And give me permission to do whatever seems like a good idea at the time, no matter how weird it gets." Admiral Thorne raised an eyebrow. "Define whatever seems like a good idea." "Sir, if I could define it in advance, it wouldn't be properly unpredictable, would it?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Brixtal's translator crackled to life. "The probability of success using conventional tactics is approximately 12%. The probability of success using Rodriguez protocol tactics cannot be calculated because the variables are literally incomprehensible to our mathematical models. In other words, Maya translated, "You have no idea what I'm going to do," which means the enemy won't either. Exactly. Admiral Thorne looked around the table at his colleagues, then back at Maya. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, you're hereby granted command of Task Force Chaos, consisting of 12 vessels and authorization to engage the hegemony using whatever methods you deem appropriate." Maya raised her coffee cup in a mock salute. "Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Try not to worry too much while I'm gone. I'll either solve your hegemony problem or create several new ones that are much more interesting." As she headed for the door, Admiral Cadet called after her. "Rodriguez, what should we tell the Galactic Council about your mission parameters?" Maya paused in the doorway and grinned. "Tell them we're conducting advanced diplomatic negotiations through the universal language of controlled chaos." "And if that doesn't work?" "Then tell them we're going to make the hegemony so confused they'll surrender just to make the weirdness stop." The door closed behind her, leaving 12 of the galaxy's most experienced military leaders sitting in stunned silence. Finally, Admiral Thorne spoke. "Anyone else feel like we just unleashed something that we're going to either deeply regret or be eternally grateful for?" "Both," replied Admiral Cadet. "Definitely both." 3 weeks later, the hegemony of Vorth officially surrendered to the Galactic Alliance, citing what their commander described as incomprehensible tactical maneuvers that violated every known principle of military engagement. The official reports were classified, but rumors persisted about fleet formations that looked like ancient Earth constellation patterns, the battle communications conducted entirely in limericks, and a final engagement where the hegemony flagship retreated after being challenged to what appeared to be an interstellar dance-off. Maya Rodriguez, now Commander Rodriguez, returned to find herself reassigned to a new position, Director of Unconventional Warfare Studies at the Galactic Naval Academy. Her first official act was to institute a new course called Creative Problem Solving Through Controlled Chaos, which quickly became the most popular elective in Academy history. Her second official act was to convince the Academy to install better coffee makers in every building. 6 months after that, she walked into a briefing room full of admirals who immediately stopped talking and turned to her with expectant expressions. The same room where she'd once been called to answer for. Breaking rules she didn't even know existed had become the place where the galaxy's military leadership came to ask her to break new ones. Maya Rodriguez, the cadet who had arrived as a novelty admission and a potential disaster, had become exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone who understood that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to convince everyone involved that the problem didn't actually make sense in the first place. She settled into her chair, produced her ever-present coffee cup, and grinned at the assembled military leadership of known space. "So," she said, taking a sip of her coffee, "what impossible thing do you need a human to fix today?" The admirals all started talking at once, eager to present their latest crisis to the woman who had turned military science into an art form and chaos into a weapon. Outside the briefing room windows, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and somewhere in the vast galaxy, the problems waited to be solved by someone who had never met a rule she couldn't find a creative way around. Maya Rodriguez had started her career as the cadet who didn't fit in. Now she was the commander everyone turned to when fitting in wasn't working anymore. And as she listened to the admirals describe their latest impossible situation, she couldn't help but smile. After all, impossible was just another word for haven't tried the human approach yet.